The fall of a king is rarely swift. It is a slow, excruciating descent, a series of missteps, betrayals, and self-inflicted wounds that culminate in a final, tragic unraveling. For Kanye West, once a dark horse turned global icon, his downfall has played out like an opera of excess and madness. The man who had risen from obscurity to carve a kingdom from the bones of an industry that sought to reject him is now teetering on the edge, his legacy threatened by his own spiraling mind. Kanye's decline has not been a sudden collapse, but an agonizing erosion, a chipping away of the man who once reshaped music, fashion, and culture. From the highest echelons of influence to becoming a pariah in the eyes of many, his fall has been documented in excruciating detail. There was once a time when he was the cultural zeitgeist, changing music and fashion like it was his morning routine. He treated every album like an opera, baroque cathedrals of sound, a canvas splattered with the blood of every triumph and every mistake. For every masterpiece he's created, there are just as many headlines marking him as public enemy number one. Calling out homophobia and name-dropping the president devolved into frustrated tweets and performances interrupted by rants. Every post, every outburst felt like watching someone cry out for help in a language only they could understand. For years, fans tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was performance art, a way to disrupt the system from within. Others, heartbroken, saw it as betrayal. The Kanye who once spoke truth to power was now aligning himself with it. Recently, Kanye went further than ever with the shocking stunt on the Grammys' red carpet, proudly leaving the awards show after causing enough chaos. Following it up with an extended rant on X, he sunk to rock bottom, forcing his most dedicated listeners to draw the line and say enough is enough. How did this happen? How could a generational artist ruling with an iron fist in multiple industries fall this hard? What goes through Kanye's mind every time he puts his own legacy at risk? Today, we will examine everything that led to Kanye's decline and self-destruction, leaving his fans with distorted memories of a man who once used to be an inspiration. This is Beyond the Record. Kanye has always had his fair share of controversial moments. Calling out the president on national television during Hurricane Katrina,
in Louisiana and Mississippi may end up being the most tragic loss of all.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
Please call.
In the past few days,
interrupting Taylor Swift at the VMAs,
I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time. One of the best videos of all time.
wearing a MAGA hat to meet with Donald Trump, claiming it was a choice during a rant at the TMZ offices.
For 400 years? For 400 years? That sounds like a choice. Like, you was there for 400 years and it's all of y'all?
Kanye was and is chaos incarnate and doesn't care about the consequences that follow. In the midst of all this, no one could have expected how bad things would continue to get. But first, we have to examine the straw that broke the camel's back, and first look at the dark side of the new man known as Ye. Kanye West's 2020 presidential run was chaotic and widely seen as a reflection of his struggles with mental health. Running as an independent under the birthday party, he held an emotional rally in South Carolina where he broke down in tears while discussing and his family, sparking concerns about his well-being. The public scrutiny, combined with his increasingly erratic behavior, strained his relationships, most notably with his then-wife Kim Kardashian. The failed campaign, along with the backlash and personal turmoil, seemed to exacerbate his struggles with bipolar disorder, leading to further public outbursts in the following years. Behind closed doors, the turbulence was just as intense. We'll set the stage in early 2021, when Kanye's ex, superstar Kim Kardashian, first filed for divorce. His marriage to Kim, once painted as the ultimate power couple of the modern era, was falling apart under the weight of his control issues and unpredictable behavior. Kanye didn't just love Kim, he wanted to mold her, to orchestrate her image, to dictate where she went, what she wore, who she was seen with. Over time, it became clear she wasn't his partner so much as a living extension of his brand, an avatar in the ever-expanding universe of Kanye West. When she finally left, the fallout was ugly, raw, and public. He lashed out, unleashing relentless attacks on her and Pete Davidson, the man she moved on with.
Media outlets that called me when I was trying to get that addict away from my kids that was tattooing my kids' names on them, Skeet, Pete Davidson.
His Instagram became a battleground of heartbreak, rage, and obsession as he swung between desperate pleas and veiled threats. a man grasping at something already slipping through his fingers. Losing his family seemed to fracture something in him, sending him deeper into a place where paranoia and resentment clouded everything. The world had once watched in awe as Kanye West reshaped music, fashion, and culture in his own image. Now, they watched in exhaustion as he tore himself apart, his empire crumbling under the same relentless energy he had built it with. What was once a love story wrapped in spectacle had become a sad tale of fame, ego, and the cost of never knowing when to stop. The rollout for Donda was an unpredictable symphony of chaos, anticipation, and frustration. In the middle of a divorce, Kanye lived in isolation at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, scrapping, reworking, and delaying music over and over again. Back against the wall while feuding with the biggest rapper in the world, friend turned enemy Drake. The whole ordeal was a reflection of his inner turbulence, restless, fractured, and impossible to pin down. Yet, amid the disarray, Kanye still managed to create moments that felt like glimpses of the genius that once made him untouchable. Despite the length and last-minute revisions, Donda was an ambitious work that left many captivated. Even in the mess, there was a brilliance, a pulse that reminded us of why we'd fallen in love with him in the first place. He was still capable of crafting anthems that resonated on a deeply personal level, yet could speak to an entire generation. Donda was his proof. Even at his most scattered, he could still create something monumental, a reflection of his legacy that was as complex and layered as the man himself. The crescendo of this chapter came with the Free Larry Hoover benefit concert, a moment that, for many, felt like the perfect end to an era. On stage with Drake, the two giants of hip-hop shared a rare, almost surreal unity, bridging years of tension with a performance that felt like a cinematic farewell. But, as always, Kanye couldn't resist the pull of the abyss. What could have been a graceful exit, a final bow to the world that had watched him rise and fall, quickly unraveled into another unrelenting spiral. It was as if the chaos that had once propelled him became the very thing that consumed him. His obsession with control grew once again, his need to dominate the narrative became his undoing, and the desire for headlines began to outweigh any sense of peace. The brief moment of reconciliation with Drake, a fleeting glimpse of redemption, withered into nothing, leaving only the wreckage of another fractured connection. Looking back, the Donda era feels like the last great moment when Kanye was still a generational artist, on top of the world, before anyone even realized it was slipping away. It had everything. Music that resonated, a storm of controversy that only made him more talked about, and that final act, performance that could have been the curtain call to end all curtain calls. It was a moment that could have closed his story in a way that felt true to the legend he had created, a rare instance of an artist at the peak of their powers, still with something meaningful to say. But true to Kanye's nature, he couldn't let it end there. The brilliance, the unpredictability, the mess, it was all part of him, inseparable from the man himself. It was what made him who he was. But this time, as he pushed further and further into the chaos, something shifted. It wasn't just a spectacle anymore, the play for attention, the desire to be everything at once. He was sinking deeper, losing himself in the very thing that once defined him. What had been a final hurrah, a moment of artistic brilliance, wrapped in the chaos of Kanye's signature contradictions, became, instead, a quiet unraveling. And by the time the world realized, it was already too late. He had become more than a figure in the media. He had become a casualty of the very forces he had once controlled. Kanye's hunger for attention had always been a defining trait, but in recent years it became his sole driving force. No longer fueled by artistic passion, his antics felt increasingly desperate, alienating even his most loyal fans. The breaking point for many came in 2022 when Kanye debuted his infamous Lives Matter t-shirt at Paris Fashion Week, standing alongside Candace Owens in a moment that felt deliberately antagonistic. This wasn't the same Kanye who had called out George Bush for neglecting black communities during Hurricane Katrina or spoke against homophobia in hip-hop. This was a version of Kanye who had fully embraced reactionary politics. The backlash was swift, but rather than course correct, Kanye only dug deeper. His Twitter rants became increasingly unhinged, culminating in a string of remarks that led to his fallout with Adidas, Balenciaga, and nearly every major brand that had once supported him. The empire he had built, brick by brick, was now crumbling under the weight of his own self-inflicted damage. Rather than retreating and reflecting, Kanye doubled down by meeting with white Nick Fuentes, enlisting his help for business and political ventures. As if this wasn't disgusting enough, Kanye proved he was stuck in his ways in the most shocking way possible, appearing on Alex Jones's InfoWars podcast, where he openly praised and It was a moment that felt like a complete 180 from the Kanye who once fought against injustice and oppression. Watching him sit across from one of the most notorious conspiracy theorists in the world, gleefully spouting dangerous rhetoric, was a devastating confirmation that he was far past the point of redemption. He also invoked harmful stereotypes about Jewish control over media and finance, reinforcing tropes. No longer could anyone chalk it up to mere controversy-seeking or performance art. Kanye West had fully embraced a hateful ideology, alienating the vast majority of his fans, peers, and former collaborators. Even employees of his were rattled at his actions, such as relating to him, calling himself and foreshadowing a plan to go after them. The artist who had once prided himself on being a voice for the voiceless had become unrecognizable, consumed by his own self-destructive spiral. While Kanye was setting his own world ablaze, he introduced a queen who would watch the flames alongside him. Bianca Censori accompanied Ye after the Paris Fashion Week incident, eventually getting married in December of that same year. Kanye clearly had a type, and he had no intention of being private or classy. Kanye and Bianca would engage in risque displays publicly, being shamed by many on social media, but to no effect. The shift was unsettling, not just because of how quickly it happened, but because it seemed forced, as if Kanye was trying to recreate the life he lost rather than moving forward. Just as Vultures constantly evolved with new versions, changed track lists, and reworked ideas, his personal life mirrored that same instability. Fans who had grown used to seeing Kim as a central figure in Kanye's public persona were put off by the earlier recruitment of Julia Fox, now fully disappointed in Bianca's arrival. They watched reluctantly as Bianca was seemingly molded into a new muse, often donning avant-garde, hyper-minimalist outfits reminiscent of Kanye's Yeezy aesthetic. The entire situation felt less like a natural progression and more like another calculated spectacle, another part of the ongoing performance that was Kanye's life at the time. Rumors surrounding Kanye's addiction to commonly known as have added another layer to his already chaotic public persona. Some speculate that his alleged dependence on the substance contributed to his creative and personal decline, leading to a noticeable drop in the quality and consistency of his music. Where Kanye was once known for his meticulous artistry and boundary-pushing innovation, his later projects became increasingly unfocused, erratic, and rushed. Fans who had once admired his art began to notice a steep decline in his work, coinciding with reports of his substance. If true, addiction likely played into his already unstable mental health, worsening his delusions and while dulling the sharp, forward-thinking creative mind that had once set him apart. Beyond his struggles with abuse, Kanye's battle with addiction has also been a point of discussion.
Like for me, Playboy was my gateway into full-on the addiction. My dad had a Playboy left out at age 5, and it's affected almost every choice I made for the rest of my life.
Nicki Minaj's accounts speak volumes, detailing a studio session where Kanye casually invited her to watch with him. He has openly admitted to a lifelong battle with addiction, discovering adult content in 5th grade to his mother's dismay. She tried her best to steer him on the right path, but the experiences still had a major impact on his relationships and worldview. Multiple lawsuits make the situation a lot more grim. Accusations of from a model date back to 2010, while former Yeezy staff members allege that they were forced to watch alongside Ye. It's a good time to mention that for Kanye, the accusations don't end here. Here on screen are just a few heinous accusations related to Yeezy staff. What's even worse is that during his recent tirade on X, he openly admitted to women before, speaking more recklessly than ever before. Despite his repeated declarations of faith and spirituality, his actions often stood in stark contrast to the values he claimed to uphold. The most glaring example of this hypocrisy came with his controversial Yeezy project, which sought to create high-fashion adult films with avant-garde aesthetics. The idea, unsurprisingly, was met with widespread disgust, as it directly contradicted his self-professed devotion to God, family, and moral integrity. For someone who frequently spoke about Christian values and the importance of traditional family structures, even fully embracing it during his Jesus is King era, this endeavor only reinforced the growing belief that Kanye was spiraling, both creatively and personally. Together, these issues paint a troubling picture of a man who, at his core, is deeply conflicted. His unchecked mental illness, substance and addiction-fueled impulses have driven him further away from the principles he once claimed to cherish. As he continues to chase extreme ideas and controversial projects, the divide between the Kanye of the past, the visionary artist and cultural icon, and the Ye of today grows wider, leaving many to wonder if he will ever find his way back. Without any real voices of reason left in his circle, Kanye's descent into radical extremism was inevitable. Instead of using his platform to challenge oppression, he aligned himself with it, spouting dangerous rhetoric that cost him nearly everything. His embrace of the imagery and remarks shattered any last shred of goodwill, leading to the swift collapse of his business empire. Major brands, longtime collaborators, and even artists who once revered him severed all ties. It was no longer about controversy for the sake of artistry. This was self-destruction in real time, with Kanye seemingly unaware or indifferent to the damage he was doing, not just to himself, but to those who had once believed in him. In the midst of his freefall, Kanye attempted to force himself back into relevance by inserting himself into the Kendrick and Drake beef, but neither artist took the bait. A man who once dictated the culture was now being ignored by it, left grasping for a spotlight that had moved on without him. His remix of Like That barely made a dent compared to the seismic impact of Euphoria, Family Matters, Meet the Grams, and Not Like Us, showing just how far his influence had waned. Meanwhile, Kendrick's continued dominance, headlining the Super Bowl, winning more Grammys, only further emphasized Kanye's absence from the throne he once occupied. Frustrated and unable to reclaim his relevance through music, he lashed out, storming out of the awards show with his wife, making yet another spectacle, her see-through dress grabbing more headlines than his own contributions to the night. Kanye's latest outbursts on X echo the same erratic, unchecked energy that consumed him during his 2022 downfall. His rants, filled with bile and provocation, feel like a cry for attention, each word designed to provoke, each sentence a dart thrown in the dark. He's even included Kamala Harris in his tirade, claiming he wanted to sleep with her until she lost the election, before co-signing Trump yet again. His disgusting tirade included vile comments about his best friend Virgil, frequent anti, a link to his website where he was selling t-shirts with on them, and more. The fall of a king, or what was left of one, had never been so swift. He'll spend an entire day unleashing venom into the digital abyss, only to turn around and claim it was all a social experiment, thanking Elon Musk for the platform to speak his mind, free from consequence. After logging out of Twitter and deactivating his account, he's now returned, but in the blink of an eye, he's back at it, doubling down, as if he's not just a man desperately trying to ignite controversy, but someone genuinely unraveling in real time. Just recently, he went on the platform to say that he's not after reflecting, but at this point, it's impossible to know what Ye does or doesn't stand for. His words have become empty, replaced by a trail of actions that have only become more and more revolting. Each action and opinion seems like just another desperate attempt at attention. There's no deeper purpose here, no grand strategy, no artistic commentary, just a man lost in the noise, grasping at anything to keep the world watching, even as his words push him further into irrelevance. At this point, no one is really sure whether his rants come from a place of genuine conviction, financial desperation, or the all-consuming narcissistic need to be seen. It doesn't matter. The end result is the same. A legacy in shambles, an artist who once revered now surrounded only by the most bitter and broken, those who still follow him down this spiraling path of self-destruction. And as if the public spectacle of his implosion weren't enough, Kanye's personal life mirrored his inner chaos. His erratic behavior further distanced himself from those who he once considered allies. The back and forth on Diddy was a particular low, revealing just how far he had fallen. At first, he condemned Diddy, piling on amidst rising allegations, but then, without warning, he embraced him, aligning himself with one of the most polarizing figures in hip-hop. This wasn't a gesture of solidarity, but pure spite, a desperate, reactive need to latch onto controversy. It was a betrayal of any moral compass he may have once had, a clear sign that Kanye was now playing the game solely for the chaos it could bring. What was once a man who rewrote the rules of culture now finds himself in the aftermath of his own destruction, a ghost in the machine of a world that has already moved on. With every bridge burned and every potential lost, Kanye has faded from a cultural icon to an internet troll, screaming into the void, desperate to remain relevant in a narrative that no longer belongs to him. Kanye had endured so much, inspiring a generation and reshaping the sound of hip-hop more than once, only to let it all crumble under the weight of his own bitterness. Once capable of turning pain into classics, he now turned it into hatred, into divisiveness, into soulless attempts at staying relevant. His once boundless creativity had dulled, even as he hyped up Vultures as his grand return. AI-generated vocals replaced genuine innovation, and his focus on spectacle over substance left fans disillusioned. Instead of healing himself and cherishing his family, he let his self-destruction spill onto those closest to him. His legacy, once untouchable, now seemed destined to rot, leaving behind only memories of what could have been. Memories now buried beneath the ashes of an empire he set ablaze himself. Kanye West was once a name synonymous with genius, an artist whose impact on music and culture was undeniable. Now, that same name is spoken with exhaustion, disappointment, and outright disdain. His history of controversial statements was always tolerated because the music he created overshadowed the chaos, but that balance no longer exists. The classics he once crafted feel distant, their significance eroded by the relentless waves of hate he continues to spew. His work, once immortalized, is now being discarded by a growing number of people who cannot separate the art from the artist any longer. What was once a complicated legacy full of contradictions has now become a bleak, irredeemable stain. There is no redemption arc waiting for Kanye this time, no triumphant return, no grand reinvention. His controversies no longer feel like the calculated, headline-grabbing moments they once were. Instead, they reveal a man who has abandoned reason, empathy, and the very essence of what once made him brilliant. He has become so consumed by his own grievances that he prioritizes fueling division over creating anything meaningful. The world has moved forward without him, yet he continues to set fire to everything in his path, believing he can still control the narrative. But instead of burning the world down with him, all that crumbles is his own empire, leaving behind nothing but ash and regret. There was a time when Kanye West felt invincible, when his music, his vision, and his raw creativity made him untouchable. But now, he is no longer a force to be reckoned with, just a fading echo of what once was. The respect, admiration, and cultural dominance he spent decades building have been discarded, not by outside forces, but by his own hand. His story, once an epic filled with triumph and tragedy, has lost its brilliance, replaced by a grim inevitability. The growing cloud over his legacy is no longer just doubt. It is finality. The world will remember him, but not for the reasons he once hoped. Kanye West, the man who gave the world beautiful works of art, the man so many people knew, appreciated, admired, and loved, is no more. Kanye West is dead. In his place is Ye, a blasphemous shadow of the boundary-breaking genius that changed hip-hop forever. Thriving off chaos and controversy without the creative fire to match, he has left his once revered legacy stained and hollow, drifting through the wreckage of his own making and becoming a cautionary tale of what happens when brilliance is swallowed by ego.